Welcome to the Be Fierce Multisport Podcast. My name is Jill Bartholomew, and I'm your host and head coach at Be Fierce. And I'm with my co-host today, Troy Theodosio, who is going to be with me talking about the recent Run Disney event this past weekend at Disney World in Florida. Their Run Disney Springtime Surprise Challenge weekend, which I and my son both participated in.
Well, thank you for the warm introduction, Jill, and thank you for having me again. How I would like to start off is your motivation behind Run Disney, because as you can see, there are a few medals in the background. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I am not a lifelong runner. I am we talk about adult onset swimming. I'm an adult onset runner. I took up running after I got divorced. I had lost a bunch of weight. I was, looking for my new crew, right? Like, where can I meet new people that have a healthier lifestyle than in my previous life? And, I was doing some local 5Ks and was in some like run groups. And I wanted to do some longer distances, but they were also like intimidating. I'm like, wait, you mean that they do runs at Disney? And I went to sign up, and this was like way back in early mid 2020 or 2019. I went to sign up, and the only event that was open was the marathon and the half marathon. And I was like, oh, let's do the half marathon. Now, I'd never done a half marathon.
I was going to say that's a little different to a 5K.
That was yeah. That was my first half marathon, and I trained for it as best as I knew how. I didn't have a coach. I was kind of younger and dumber, and that was in so my first half marathon was at Disney World at Marathon Weekend 2020. Right before COVID. I was not signed up for Princess that year, but I actually was signed up to do the challenge at Star Wars Weekend, which got canceled that year. And I have since then done every distance at every Run Disney weekend and every challenge at Florida at Walt Disney World since then. And
Wow.
I've also done a couple of the ones in California since they reopened California, including last year I did Dopey in Florida. It was my technically fifth Dopey. And then did Dumbo the following weekend in California. So that was like 77 miles, 7 finish line, 77 miles in like 10 days kind of thing. It was
Wow.
it's pretty awesome. Super slept very well after that was done. And this year, another perfect season for me, which concluded this weekend. The Run Disney season runs from the fall to the spring.
Awesome.
And, so that's why I did it. Cause to me, I'm like, this is my thing. I do Ironman, and like the triathlon stuff. It's, I also do the Run Disney stuff, and I love it. It's such a different vibe. It's like Run Happy, it's Brooks' logo, but, and Disney's is every mile is magic. Every mile is not magic, but you can still run in a magical place.
For sure. Well, let's dive in. So let's talk about your preparation. How did you prepare? Did you have a specific training plan in mind? Obviously, this is not new to you. You've done a few. You're very familiar with the courses, with the setup. So talk us through preparation.
Yeah. So for this particular weekend, it's a little different from like Dopey in January. Has more of a specific training plan. For this weekend, I didn't really follow a training plan because I have Ironman Texas in a couple weeks. So for me, I treated it as like long runs on that other training plan instead of having something separate for it. As a result, though, both like trying to protect my body as best I can, because doing 20 miles in 3 days is, still stressful on your body.
Sure.
I was not moving at like a normal for me race pace. I think I ran the 10 miler about the same as I ran a half marathon a couple weekends ago, right? It's like took it a little bit easy. I treated it more as like heat and temperature and humidity acclimation
Nice.
for the race in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That was to me like the main benefit out of it. I mean, there's a lot of bling too, like that. That's a good benefit too.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't at race pace, so I didn't treat it that way. Now when I wasn't doing these ultra endurance events and treating these as like part of that training, then I was following like a more specific run plan. I had a
Sure.
run, I had a run coach, and we'd build these into the plan. We'd start with wine and dine. Over the summer we trained for basically marathon weekend in January for Dopey. And along the way you've got wine and dine, then marathon weekend, and then you've got all the fitness from marathon weekend to maintain going into Princess and springtime surprise. Although the temperatures at springtime surprise are always very high, so performance is lower.
Yeah, I think it's important for our listeners to understand that obviously it's quite a shock to the system, right? But it's also important to highlight the fact that there's certain goals within the goal, right? So obviously the focus for you is Ironman Texas coming up in a couple of weeks, but you had certain goals and objectives from this past race weekend, being in Orlando, looking to get acclimated. And so I think it's important to remind our listeners that you can embrace a race weekend and have goals within goals that can actually help you in terms of preparing for the season ahead.
Yeah, totally. And as a coach, we talk to folks about like what's your A race.
Yeah,
A lot of people like the race environment, whether it's Disney or it's New York, New York Roadrunners or something else. Races are fun.
yeah,
They're high adrenaline events. You're around 20,000 of your you know best buddies for the day, and they're addictive. So not but so we do them because we like them, but not every race is going to be your A race. For me this year, my A race was supposed to be two. One was Texas, one was Kona. This year I've changed that, Lake Placid and Kona. And the
okay,
reason why I changed that is like I'm physically not where I wanted to be heading into Texas.
sure,
So now Texas is, Ironman Texas becomes more of like a sea race. So
yeah,
it's going to be fun. I'm going to do it. But I don't want to hurt myself doing
yeah,
it. So it won't be at like full intensity because I'm not trained. My fitness isn't, where it should be to do that. And it was the same thing for these other weekends. It's like, what's your A race? And talk to your coach, and everything else, like put into the training plan. Long races. These are endurance events. Whether it's springtime is endurance because you've got both the distance and the heat.
yeah,
And for slower runners, it's worse because you know, I'm in a corral, start at the front of a corral, and we get the privilege of starting earlier in the day, and especially for springtime surprise, those it takes them at minimum an hour to launch everyone. So where I was finishing just after they started, uh, it was really hot and
yeah,
really humid for all the races.
yeah,
They're starting in what I felt was hot and humid.
yeah,
They're finishing in like really oppressive conditions. So like, that for, we always, if you're only doing like springtime or you're only doing like princess, you got to train for the temperatures too.
yeah. Jill, how much attention do you pay to specific simulations with regards to your hydration, your nutrition, especially when you sort of approach the weekend with more of a training mindset? Do you feel that you're able to execute these simulations better than you would if you were at home just going for a long run?
I think so. Um, for a couple of reasons. So for me, my general plan is, you know, on the bike for a triathlon, you know, X number of carbs, per hour. And I divide that into 20-minute segments. And on the run, it's about 30% fewer carbs, but also divided into, you know, 20 to 30-minute segments.
Sure.
And then hydration follows the same, right? And on the run, when you're out there by yourself, you're self-supported,
Yeah.
right? Unless like I'm fortunate enough, my husband occasionally follows me around on the bike with water bottles. But
Spoiled.
right, right. But most of the time, you're kind of out there with a hydration pack, which I'm not a big fan of running with sloshing water on my back. And it's easy to kind of slack off and you know go into a walk or have a slower pace. When there's 20,000 people around you, you kind of have like the motivation to keep
Yeah.
going. It's like you pick the people that you're like, I'm gonna finish in front of you.
Not
Uh,
competitive at all, Jill.
that's not just me. I hope it does that. No, I'm like I'm gonna fish in front of you, and I get really upset when the Pacers pass me. I'm like, no, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, like out on the race, you got water tables every so often, and I typically like the Disney races. One of their sponsors is Sport Beans. I don't use Sport Beans, so I bring my own. Ironman has Martin on course, so that's
Yeah.
what I use
Yeah.
because it's more convenient than carrying 20 pounds of something else.
But Jill, I think that's super important because what folks need to be mindful of is sticking to your plan. So in spite of the fact that you're at a different race, if you know that the nutrition is going to be different, you can have severe and somewhat very adverse responses to taking in new nutrition. And so I
You,
think that's
you know what
something
they say,
that's
nothing new on race day,
yeah, I
right?
think that's something that you need to really be careful of is plan ahead, which obviously you've done, and so you carry the nutrition that your body is used to.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of online forums specific to Run Disney. And I think it's great that such a community has evolved around it. Unfortunately, like the downside of that is there's a lot of people asking like really legitimate questions
Yeah,
and ignoring like the trolley answers of like go look it up. Um, right. I love that one. It's like go look
super
it up.
helpful.
Use the
Yeah,
search feature. It's like, have you ever tried to execute a search on Facebook? It's sketchy on a good day. And anyways, but as a result, right, there's a lot of good advice. There's also a lot of not good advice out there. And I've
sure.
seen a few times where like there's people offering advice that could potentially land you in a hospital.
Yeah,
Um, so I sometimes, poke my head in and offer up, my 2 cents. Sometimes I get challenged on that, which is really, really fun because like sometimes the challenge is like good. It challenges your thinking.
sure.
Other times it's like, really, guys? No,
Yeah,
no, don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's like I saw
Stick to
one.
your day job.
Yeah, it's like when I see people who are like, you should be taking 50% more water in for the 2 weeks leading up to a race. I'm like, you probably shouldn't do that. There's not going to be any benefit on race day to you doing that other than having to pee a lot. And if you're not taking electrolytes with it, it could kill you. So
Yeah,
don't do that.
yeah. Jill, this is always something that I pay close attention to because so often it differs so drastically. Now, for somebody that's done many a Disney runs, let's talk about expectations going into the weekend versus reality. Anything pop up out of the ordinary? Were there any surprises?
The biggest surprise on this race, one was me. So yeah, I've done a lot of these right this season. Hasn't been great to me from an injury perspective. I was telling you beforehand, right? We get there early and with limited sleep, and on the relatively easy jog between the pre-corral and the corral. And for those who do run Disney and don't know what the pre-corral is, if you're there before the corral opens, they hold you with where the green balloons are before they let you into the big corral area. And I felt like this pain in my right, like it's like a weird spot. It's like at the very, very tippy top of your hamstring, where the hamstring and glute kind of come together. And I was like, oh crap. And that stayed with me the whole weekend. I'm like, I need to get it checked out. I'm going tonight to get it checked out. But I'm like 98% certain it's like a piriformis kind of pull. which like out of the blue, it's like I wasn't doing anything super stressful. It just boom, there it is. It's like it sucks to get old. So running through that is like, becoming an expert at running through pain is not what I set out to do when I wanted to do these endurance events. But it's a thing. The the other thing is like this was a really hot weekend. And it was a really humid weekend.
Yeah.
Springtime Surprise is a relatively new weekend. I think this was year 4 or 5, and I've done all of them. If they ever do perfect, that'll be my only one that I'm perfect for. It's usually it's been this weekend twice, and it's been late, but it's usually kind of later. And this weekend is weird because it's unseasonably warm this weekend. Like the weekend last week and this week are normal,
Normal.
but
Murphy's
like
Law.
the week in between
Yeah.
is like unseasonably warm
Well,
in general. And that combined with the timing of the start of the race, the gun tends to go off right around the same time that the dew point is hitting.
okay.
So the earlier runners are like, if you looked at my Instagram post, my last picture was captioned with suffocating, as because like you're running through like soup. It's
Yeah.
like, the same thing happened this year at Wine and Dine, except it got like really foggy. It doesn't in the spring. It doesn't get like really foggy, but it's like fascinating. We're all at the start line and we're glistening. We're not sweating. We're condensing.
Yeah. Oh
But
man.
yeah, that was like the thing is like it was hotter than normal, and your body, like I treat the 5K as like my body is adjusting to the humidity so that by the time I make it to the 10 miler, I can
Yeah.
actually like put a solid effort in. But hey, on the flip side, my VO2 max went up to 0.2.
There you go. There you go. Way to handle some of the unforeseens. Whether your body responding slightly adversely. But that's kind of the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah, I mean that's endurance sports, and running especially is hard on the body, and it's like as you age, strange things happen unexpectedly.
Sure. Well, Jill, let's talk about some of those favorite moments. I know you continue to go back to Disney, and have done so for consecutive years. So talk us through some of these favorite moments for those that have never done a Run Disney event.
So if we go back and like ask the question like why do you keep coming back? Um yeah, you're running through Disney and that's cool. Um that's fun. That's magical. But I've the Springtime Surprise 10 miler is fundamentally the same course that we ran before, last year. It's similar to the half marathon course we ran at Wine and Dine. They change up the courses every once in a while, but the last few years they've been pretty similar. Uh, the half marathon and marathon in January and February, uh, they were different. They ran them in reverse, which was different. But you keep going back for the atmosphere, which comes down to the people.
Yeah,
It's like you got Carissa and John up on stage, doing their thing, and before they got on stage, there's the DJs, and it's like you were on the bus at 2:30 in the morning, and you've been up since 1:30. Everyone's tired, and yet the energy in the air is unlike anything I've ever experienced anywhere else.
yeah.
Even at a world championship, it does not match the energy.
Wow.
And you've got all walks, all income levels, all walks of life, people coming together to do this thing that they love at
Yeah,
this place that they love. And they're all competing at different levels, right? In the A corral is usually like the top 500 plus or minus, and you've got still there, elite runners, pro triathletes, Olympians who are competing, and then at the other end you've got folks who are like, this is my first race. I'm
yeah.
doing it because it's at Disney and because it feels like a safe environment and it feels like a supportive environment and it's fun and
Awesome.
they're not even sure that they're going to be able to finish cross the finish line. And a lot of us are dressed up in costumes of different varieties, which are kind of cool.
Yeah.
I saw a few, like I think it was on the 10K. This girl was lined up in the pre-corral in front of me, dressed like Gamora. There were a lot of people out on course dressed like Gamora, but this girl, she went all in, head to toe. She had the green body paint, everything, like she had it down.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I'm like, I am sweating just thinking about the makeup that you have over your whole
Are
body.
there awards for best dressed?
There shouldn't be, or there should be. I don't
But they're
think there
not?
are. There's
No
not.
ways. Wow.
But if you look at like Run Disney's like Instagrams and X posts and threads and Facebook, and TikTok and wherever else they post, they put in like the people that they think have cool outfits. They somehow manage to make it into these reels.
Come on, Disney. I challenge Disney. I challenge Run Disney to award these folks who go the extra mile. Might not be the greatest runners, but they go all out in terms of costume and dress. I feel like they should get special awards.
People go all out. Like it's a thing. If you check out like the Facebook groups, um, like there is like advice groups on making Run Disney costumes, and like this
Okay.
people put a lot of effort and time into planning their costumes, and like this year at Princess especially, but also Marathon Weekend, like this was unseasonably hot. Those weekends were really cold. They were like some of the races were at the start were just above freezing.
Wow.
And people, Princess usually is pretty temperate. Like it's usually pretty nice, like in the 60s, 50s, not the 30s. And, these people, the questions were like, I spent all this time on these costumes and now it's totally inappropriate to wear because the forecast is,
Changed.
32 degrees and rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, now how can you modify it to work with that? I've never put that much effort. I think the most effort I put in is buying a, Crown Athletics outfit or a skater dress off of, you know, Etsy or something. But yeah,
Well,
it got pretty crazy though a couple years ago. Disney had to put in restrictions on costumes because
oh
like
dear. People took
some
it a
of the
little too far.
oh yeah, there was like Slinky Dog,
Oh
where
my
you got
gosh.
both ends with the spring in
Okay.
between. It's like
Yeah.
that probably shouldn't be allowed on course.
So it can get a little dangerous.
It can. So like yeah, that they've kind of clamped down a bit on what you can and can't do.
Well, Jill, I think it goes without saying that the community is what makes this so special, and I think that's what draws you in
Oh,
and
for
has kept
sure.
you coming back.
Yeah, I have a couple of groups. One we call ourselves the front left A group. We have a text string. There's like 6 or 8 of us, and we mostly all do all the races. And when one person in the group doesn't, it's like oh man, Greg, where are you?
Yeah.
We miss you. But yeah, it's a community, and we've actually started to do some like when we're all down there. Uh, some of us have like started to do things together because like the person that in the corral is not always the same person that they are in real life,
For sure.
and when you find people that you're like these are really like good fun people to hang out with, it's
Yeah.
like we start finding ways to hang out.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little more because inevitably, you meet somebody along the way, right? Tell us about those interactions because somebody who showed up a stranger more often than not leaves a new best friend.
Oh man. Um, yeah, the first few years, I was doing the races. I was getting faster, so it's kind of like moving forward in the corrals. And you talk to people in the corrals because you've got a long wait, right?
Yeah.
The corrals, most races open like 3:45 a.m., 3:30 a.m., and the gun goes off at 5. I've met people that I went to the same high school with,
Oh
or
wow.
that live in the same town, or that I've met on other trips, or I've met like through
Oh, that's
work
neat.
or
Yeah.
other things. It's kind of cool. This one woman, we still kind of, we kind of talk every once in a while. Uh, we weren't in the same class in high school, but we went to the same high school.
Okay.
And, I'm like, that was cool. And, we met during COVID at one of I think it was actually like Wine and Dine that year. The 10K, I still have like PTSD from. It was like 28 degrees and raining sideways at 40 miles an hour when we were standing in the corral with nothing to protect us. That was awesome.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, no, I think there was this guy who I had talked to in the corral. This was last year at like Wine and Dine. And then, we were chatting again at marathon weekend, and we were both running uh Dopey to Dumbo, and we were in the corral next to each other again in California and kind of became friends.
Awesome.
He and I finished together in the half marathon, through no fault of either of ours. Like, it wasn't intentional.
Sure.
We like you see in the photos, me, him, which I think was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And, we've kind of stayed in touch. And this other group, one of the guys, he had a pretty good, BQ this past year at the marathon at Dopey. It was an impressive time. He trained for it. That was his race.
Nice.
And he didn't do Dopey. He did, I think, the 5K and the marathon. Like, he was very intentional. He's like, I'm BQing. That's what
Yeah.
I'm training for. That's what I'm
Yeah.
going to do. And, you know, he's been like, shoe advice and, this and that. Like, I'm like, I'm looking for new shoes. What do you like? And, he had some great advice on that. So yeah, you meet people that you like and you keep in touch with them.
Now, Jill, I've heard a lot about these magical moments. Let's talk about character stops and entertainment on course, especially for people like myself who have not participated.
So character stops are like, I've never seen anything like it at another race. And it leads to an interesting phrase that you'll hear a lot. Um, People don't PR at Disney races. They PR in fun. Sorry, I have a lot of PRs from Disney races. People do PR at Disney races. People do BQ at Disney races. So you'll have a long course, a couple of different things. Some is like passive entertainment, like video screens. Lately, it's a lot of Disney Plus ads. Um, but there'll be like videos playing, which is kind of nice. When you've got like long open stretches of highway. So three of the races, the half and full in January, and then the half at Princess, go from Epcot to Magic Kingdom and back. And that is a long, dark stretch of highway, and often foggy to boot. And, aside from the excitement of running through the Magic Kingdom toll booth, there's really nothing else in between to look at.
Sure.
So having these random video screens is kind of cool. There's music, and then characters, and they're not regular characters, right? So yeah, you got Mickey and Minnie, and the ones you see in the park, but it's not like Fab Five stuff. It's
Okay.
a lot of times characters you never see.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes ones that you're like, I didn't even know that they had, that character. I've never seen it in anything. It's
Sure.
the ones you see in parades and in shows.
Yeah.
So this past weekend, we had, you know, The Incredibles. We had, they were on course, and you see them in Hollywood studios, but it's also Hades, a number of the princesses, Merida. Oh gosh, there were so many. I don't even
So
remember the
many.
rest.
I don't know how you take them all in.
But yeah, and some of them rotate. So like as one goes, another one comes in, and so like Ashton ran quite a bit faster than me this weekend,
As he
uh,
should. As he should.
as he should. Ninth grade teenage boy on the track team should be running
Yeah.
faster than his 40 some odd year old mom. But he also like he had goals, and he didn't meet them because he was having a hard time on the 5K with the allergies with pollens and the
Yeah.
temperatures. But he did really really well in all three races. But like for him, a lot of the A folks, it's like pop in, pop out.
Yeah.
So you see the character, you stop, photo, done, move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The deeper into the race you get, the longer the lines. For me, I usually skip like the first one or two so that I can have that,
Get that
pop in,
rhythm.
pop out
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Because like if you stop at the first one, that one always has a line, always. Although for like him, when you're in like the front pack of three, it's a little different.
Yeah.
There is no line.
Do they stop? Do the guys in the front stop?
Some of them do, and then catch up. Some of them don't, and but for them, like he's had experiences where like the photographer's not ready or the character's not ready.
Sure.
But you'll see, like he and I have a couple of moments where we both went to the same stop, but there was a different character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
That makes
like
sense.
the characters from Up, you'll have like I have a picture, maybe have a picture with the grandpa, and he has a picture with Doug
Okay.
at the
Very
same
cool.
stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, you stop at them. They're not meet and greets; they're photo opportunities.
Yeah.
And one piece of advice to everyone running a Disney race is treat them as a photo op. Please don't try to have an interaction with the
Yeah.
characters
Yeah.
because it annoys the people behind you who are actually trying to run the race.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great advice, Jill. My next question to you was advice for first timers. So that's obviously great advice. What else do you have outside of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of influencers out there who have a lot of different advice, and most of it is targeted at both first timers, but also slower runners, right? People who are not as fast. And Disney divides those folks into corrals based on their projected finish times. So, a couple of things like one, proof of time is super important. If you have a proof of time, submit it and be like really aware of the deadlines because once the deadline happens, like most races, you can email them and they might give you some leeway, especially if it's within like a couple of days. Disney, no, it closes at midnight at 12:01, they will not take it. There are, on an average weekend, upwards of 40,000 runners total,
Wow,
and they are not going to give you an inch. Now,
that's understandable.
I run a lot of races. I know a lot of the people that work there, and I don't get an inch either, right? So like they're really strict on it,
Yeah,
and they have to be.
yeah,
At the
that's
same
fair.
time, don't try to submit a proof of time if you don't qualify. So proof of time changes season to season. This year, proof of time was 2:30 or faster, and that generally, and it marathon weekend is its own animal. The proof of times, the way they treat them are different because it does get faster runners and it does have the marathon component. But generally, this year for Wine and Dine, Princess, and Springtime, it appears that, and I may be like wrong by a couple minutes, but it appears that Corral A was sub two, Corral B was 2 to 2:15, and Corral C was 2:15 to 2:30, and then um, projected at 2:30 who did not have proof of time. And then, the other corrals are filled basically based on projected times, but corrals have capacities. So you do have people in like corral F that had projected finish times of maybe 2:30 or 2:40. So, if you have a time qualified race of 2:30 or less, submit it because otherwise, like it's you're rolling the dice. You might be in corral F, you might be in corral C. Who knows? There is the Run Disney Platinum folks who have, corral placement in B without proof of time. They get a lot of flack. There's really not that many of them. In fact, I would say because I'm in that. Of the Run Disney Platinum folks, I know half of them have proof of time, and to the Platinum folks who are in A, like they have proof of time. That's how they got an A. If you don't have proof of time, like it's not the end of the world. You might be in Corral F, you might be in Corral E. You can run a 2:30 from Corral E. I know people who did it. I know people who've done it. I did it when I didn't have proof of time. I ran a 2:30 from Corral F. Corrals that year, I think, went to like H or something. Um, Aside from that, like it is a long week. It's a really long week. The corrals open at 3:45, gun is at 5. Corrals close 15 minutes before that corral starts moving to the start line. So for most corrals, that's 4:45, which means if you are late, even if you're in corral A, if you get there at 4:46, you are possibly running from corral F, which may be a really different race than you were expecting to have, and that may be very disappointing for you.
Yeah.
And it happens more than you think. And part of the reason why it happens is the buses that go from the resorts, which Disney provides transportation for Run Disney from the resort to the race, and they're pretty reliable, but not infallible.
Yeah.
They're kind of like they're not the normal Disney transportation. They're the big coaches that you see on the highway that hold like 100 people or whatever. And, those drivers come from all over. They're not necessarily from here. Actually, they're not Disney drivers. Some of them do this every year. Some of them don't. We've driven to Florida from our home in Philly, outside Philly, and we've seen them on the highway heading home, the day
Yeah.
after the races. So like the driver might be from Virginia,
Yeah.
and like they don't know the area, so they do occasionally make the wrong turn. They do occasionally, um, they do occasionally get lost. And if you're on a bus at 4 a.m. expecting to be in your A corral, and that driver makes a wrong turn and ends up in Magic Kingdom parking lot to turn around instead of at Epcot where they should be, you're not running from it.
To your point, Jill, I think with moving 40,000 people, it's an enormous endeavor. So you need to plan accordingly.
Yeah, and that's why we're always on the first bus out, because you know you control the things you can control,
Yeah.
and you can't control the bus getting lost, but you can control giving yourself the ability for that to happen and it not ruin your day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you'll hear like people who are like, no, it's okay. Get on the 3:30 bus, get on the 4 bus, sleep in, get the extra hour of sleep. And I'm like, no, because my stress levels would be through the roof.
Yeah.
And like I want to start the race with as little stress as I can in an otherwise stressful environment.
Yeah.
And, getting on the early bus like helps me with that.
Yeah.
And the buses do tend to start running a little bit before the published time. And, they're sometimes full too.
Yeah.
Like, the buses this week started running at 2:30, and the published time was 3. So there's that. Uh, Costumes, like plan a costume if you want to wear it, but be aware of like what the temperatures are going to be and the Run Disney guidelines. A number of people this weekend had to modify their costume on the spot because they didn't meet the guidelines. So like
Sure.
capes, you can have capes, but they have to be short.
Okay.
Anything that's a trip hazard or could hurt
Yeah.
someone else is not allowed on the course. It feels like these are kind of common sense things, but when you're in the moment of like building this really cool outfit, you kind of forget that like you could trip on it.
Yeah.
Aside from that, like it's kind of have fun, you know. If you did submit proof of time, I learned this the hard way. Um, if you have proof of time and you submitted proof of time and you end up in the last corral, that is Disney saying to you, "Come talk to us."
Oh.
It means you submitted it and they know you submitted it, but they couldn't verify it.
Oh.
And
Good
so
point.
the F on your bib when it should be an A or B because you did submit proof of time. We were told by some of the Track Shack ladies that anytime you see that, you should come talk. So,
Okay.
but that's only if you submitted proof of time. If you did not submit proof of time and you think you should be an A, you're not going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So take note, folks.
Yes.
Jill, let's talk about post-race reflections. The weekend as a whole. Obviously, you mentioned it was hot. You mentioned that you had some physical niggles. But holistically, were you happy with the weekend and how it went?
Yeah. I mean, my races didn't go as fast as I'm used to them, but that was intentional.
Sure.
Which there's always the ego involved. It's like, I ran this, at Princess last year, I ran a 138. And, this year I ran like a 152 or something. But that was on purpose. It's like, you try not to hurt yourself. So, that's, disappointing, but that's not, that's just my ego, even though like it was intentional. No, I thought this weekend actually went really well. Um, every every one of these Run Disney weekends, like there's always things that need to be improved. Marathon weekend had a lot of problems with bibs. Yeah, apparently the chips on a number of the bibs at marathon weekend were not correctly activated. So a lot of people did not have times on races
Oh dear.
because yeah. Since then, they've implemented. I'm like, I thought this was cool. It's like a great example of the Run Disney organizers like learning. And you see this at some of the larger races. They have a spot where you pick up your bibs where you can walk over a timing strip and it'll show on the screen your name pop up.
Nice.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is great. Like, you don't have to wonder if your timing chip. And I've had races where my timing chip didn't register. The
Yeah.
marathon last year, it registered at the start, but my start is 0. So I don't know that it registered or it just defaulted because my actual start is 0,
Okay.
clock time 0. And it registered at the 5K mark. It registered at the 8-mile mark, and that was it. Didn't register at the half, didn't register at the 20, didn't register at the finish. And so my finish time last year was based on the timestamp on the photo, and the timestamp on the photo was wrong because the timestamp on the photo doesn't match the clock time that's in the picture. But
Oh dear.
but Track Shack will only go by the timestamp on the photo. So my finish time last year is off by about 10 minutes.
That sounds like a
Um,
conversation for another day.
yeah, well, I mean, again, if you're them, you're like, this is the rule, because the clock's not always going to be in the picture.
Yeah.
So, it's like go by the clock time on the camera. And, that is what it is. But no, I thought this weekend went pretty well. I did hear some complaints. Most of them were about the heat. I did hear about water running out at the water stops. One thing that was surprising, it's not unusual on the marathon for it to get like quite hot because that one like, nobody is finishing before sunup, right, on a marathon. Even the guys who are running 2.5 hours, they're still not finishing before the sun rises. In usually when the temperatures are high, they add water tables, and that wasn't the case this weekend. So that surprised me a bit, and probably explains part of why they ran out of water. But my advice for the back of the Packers is, you have to plan for that, and if the temperature is going to be high, expect there to be a higher chance that some of the water tables may run out. And bring a handheld or a pack or whatever. And a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
That's great
Um,
advice.
but it's the same for like every race. Run Disney is really good compared to most other races at having very well stocked tables. But when the temperatures go up, that's when you start hearing about them running out. Um, I have heard over time some weird things like, well, the faster runners don't need it as much as the slower runners. And it's like, sorry, we still need to drink too.
Yeah.
No, I do love it. You run, you get your free banana at the end, and your box
Well worth it.
and
Yeah.
your box. They did not make the mistake of removing the plastic cheese, so like the plastic cheese crew was happy again.
Awesome.
It's a thing. I don't understand it, but like people love the plastic cheese.
Okay. Well, Jill, talk to us about what's next as far as Run Disney is concerned. What's next for you?
For me. Um, so I'm registered for the Halloween run in September. I did not submit proof of time. I am not going to run.
Intentionally?
No, I registered for it, and then plans changed.
Okay.
I'm getting married in August
There you go.
at Disney in Florida, and I'm gonna be in Hawaii the week before that at a training camp with the Betty Squad folks. And Lake Placid is the week before that. So, and then Kona is in October. So I made the decision. I'm like, I paid for it. I registered for it. I'm not going to run it because like it's just too much,
Yeah,
right? So my next Run Disney race will be Wine and Dine, which is earlier this year than like last year. It was over Halloween. It's the weekend before that this year. I have really mixed feelings on that. It's usually the same weekend as New York Marathon, and last year and this year you could potentially run both without having to miss a race. I know some folks who in the past would run like the 5K and 10K at Wine and Dine, hop on a plane after the 10K, and then go run the marathon in New York.
good
So
grief.
this year, this year you wouldn't have to do that. You could run the full challenge and then run the New York Marathon.
I wonder if they get any air miles. Excuse the pun. Do they do any running on the plane whilst they headed over? Good
I don't
grief.
know. I don't know, but I do always enjoy the occasional Strava upload when you see folks who forgot to or who had like a walk going on
Yeah,
their watch and suddenly are setting PRs on the plane.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
well
yeah.
played. Well, let's talk about the impact of the event. You mentioned Texas, Ironman Texas coming up. So let's talk through what the next couple of weeks look like for you, and what you'll do in terms of preparation, transitioning from Run Disney. What does that look like going into Ironman Texas?
Yeah, I have a busy season coming up. Doing Ironman Texas, and then I have the half at Chattanooga, the half at Happy Valley, and then I'm doing Lake Placid, which is a full. And Lake Placid is my A race for the year. So I had originally intended on Texas being an A race, but like physically, I'm not where I want it to be. I'm not ready for that. So this week is kind of getting back. There's no rest for the weary. I was in the pool this morning, and I have a hour and a half bike this afternoon. I think I have 14 or 15 hours on the training schedule this week. And that'll continue. I don't know what taper is going to look like, but it's not going to be a full taper
Okay,
since it's not an A race, right?
okay,
So it'll be a partial taper. We'll see how the Texas goes. My goals right now, because I obviously between now and Texas in 2 weeks, there's no material fitness to be gained, right? It's too
yeah,
short a period. So my goals between here and there are maintain fitness, by as much as reasonably possible, and not get hurt. That niggle that happened at Florida, I'm gonna go to the PT tonight. Hopefully we get a little bit more. If if she agrees with me that it's probably a pull, then great. If not, then it's off to the ortho to make sure that it's nothing more serious because I really don't want to go and run Texas if it's potentially a fracture.
yeah,
Been there, done that. I was telling you before we hit the record button, I ended up inadvertently running 3 marathons in 2022 on a broken leg.
yeah. We won't
I
be
thought
doing
it,
that again.
well, that's the thing is like, doctors aren't infallible either. And, you go to the doctor and they tell you it's IT band pain because your knee hurts. Do an MRI of the knee and it's clean. And it turns out that it's a fracture in the femur shaft up towards the hip. That didn't show up on the MRI. It's like, well, I told him it was knee pain and they treated it like it was knee pain. And then you later find out that no, it was actually a fracture and you ran 3 marathons on it. It's like, oof.
Yeah.
That was luck. Someone was watching out for me on that one.
Jill, on that note, I think it's super important for our listeners to understand the severity and the impact of not listening to your body. And I'm not saying that you didn't do that, but I think what's so important for our listeners to understand is that if you feel something doesn't feel right, don't be brave. Don't try and train through it. Go and get it checked out because you can potentially pick up and potentially eradicate doing more damage to something that could seem inconsequential but somewhat severe.
Yeah, that's right. So talking about that, so I competed at Nice last year. We talked about that on our last show, and came back, and the next weekend, fitness is high. I was a little sore, obviously not recovered like at all. 3 days after an Ironman, especially one with 9,000 feet of elevation gain. And I ran a 16-mile race, with my son. I didn't run it like super fast. It was like 8-minute miles. It wasn't like pushing it super hard, but not super easy either, right? Like 8 for me is like, at the time was, not pushing super hard. Today that would be, on the faster side. Um, and I pulled a hamstring doing that,
Yeah.
and that affected my entire winter training pretty significantly. Like I didn't run like much at all over the winter because I couldn't. I went to the ortho, thousands of dollars in MRIs to make sure that it wasn't another fracture.
Yeah.
It was like 6 weeks all down because we thought it was presenting as having a high likelihood of a fracture. And luckily it wasn't. It wasn't, but still. And then I've been going to the PT twice a week since November because of that. I didn't run the Philly Marathon. I was planning to this year. And my races have since then been quite a bit slower than they otherwise would be, just because like there's pain. This actually was the first race since then that I've run without any hamstring pain. So 6 months. And that's when and that's, listening to your body. Like, I know, 5 years ago, that version of me would run until like I fell apart.
The wheels fall off. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we want to avoid that at all
And
costs.
one of the kids that hangs out with us in the front left corral crew, that's exactly what he was doing. Is he had some shin splints, and they started at marathon weekend. He ran the marathon at marathon weekend, and then the next weekend he ran another marathon, but he wasn't properly trained to do two back to back. Like running one, most people would consider like a huge feat. Running two back to back, like if you're not training to do that, that's a lot of load on your body, it's a lot of
Yeah.
risk.
A lot of
And
stress.
it got worse. And then he ran Princess, and it got worse. And he ran this weekend, and he could barely walk.
Yeah.
He was in
There's,
the guy was in so much pain, and I said to him, I'm like, this is dumb. Like
yeah,
you
it's
should be going back.
negligent.
Yeah, you should be going back to your room right now. He's like,
Yeah.
I know, but I can fast walk. I'm like, no.
No.
Like if it's like tibial structures, like that's like you got to stop what you're doing.
Yeah. And so often what people forget is the fact that the more damage you do, the longer it takes you to get back and to recover. So it really doesn't pay to try and be brave. Not certainly something that we would advise.
Yeah, and I will say I've seen a few examples where like you have to respect the decision, right? Like at World Championship last year, Lucy Charles Barkley, pulled out, and she said she pulled out because she had an injury that from a previous race, and she was feeling not ready for it. And I'm
Yeah.
like that sucks, but like you gotta have respect for people
Yeah.
who actually do make that decision, especially like in that case where it like affected her wallet.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um, Jill, for those listening with regards to Be Fierce Multi-Sport and coaching, what's the best way to reach out to make contact with you?
That's a good question. Be Fierce Multisport is going to have a new website up. I am a coach on the TriDot platform, so you can find me in the coach search there. Or if you go to my Instagram, either on Be Fierce Multisport or the Try Mom, there is a link to. There's a link on my profile to schedule a call. So I'm happy to talk. It links directly to my Calendly, which speaks calendar, and knows all my availability, mostly accurate. So yeah, you can do that, or message me on Instagram at the Try Mom, or Be Fierce Multisport. They both go to the same place.
Awesome. And Jill, before we say our goodbyes, any final thoughts on Run Disney and your experience?
So obviously, I'm a huge fan of the races at Disney. I always thought Disney races were expensive until I met Ironman. Um, so it's like I love the Ironman races too, but comparatively, everything is a bargain. But not so. Sign up early. I talked to a number of folks this past weekend who now are chasing down Charity Path, not because they were unable to register, but because they forgot and missed the boat. The races a couple weeks ago, there's registration was for Marathon Weekend, and that race sold out in about an hour, which
Wow.
is not a record, but it's close. So these races do sell out fast, especially the 5Ks. Because you have to remember the 5Ks probably have the same capacity, but that one's open to kids. So a lot of families run it. So it does run out. It does sell out a lot faster. And of course, it's a 5K. It's more approachable, and they don't sweep on the 5K. Or at least that's the popular rumor. I think if you're slow enough, they would. But like realistically, if the race starts at 5, like how long could someone possibly take to walk 3 miles? So sign up early. Beyond that, there are charity bibs out there. I would be remiss if I don't encourage people to support those charities.
Yeah.
Every Run Disney race has a charity that they donate pretty substantial sums of money to. And uh, those bibs, if they don't sell them all, they don't get them back the next year. So,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a great
yeah.
point. And Jill, I think it's important that as a try as an Ironman Foundation athlete and ambassador yourself, I think we both pride ourselves on racing for a purpose. And I think it's important for people, even if you have the funds and the means, to remember that there's charities and organizations out there that need our help and support.
Yeah. And, John, um, my fiance, he's run a couple of the races for that exact reason. He missed the
Awesome.
registration boat and he ended up with a charity bib. And, running on the Disney races on charity isn't like super expensive. I mean, obviously it's more than the face value of the
Yeah,
bib,
yeah,
but they're not super expensive. I think Dopey last year for most charities was like 1,000 or 1,200, which was like twice the face value of the bib. But I do, that's a good lead in. We will talk to Audra at Ironman Foundation on an upcoming episode. I am a Ironman Foundation ambassador, and all of the races that I'm doing this year with Ironman, I am running on Ironman Foundation bibs, which I'm very excited about. And so if any of our listeners have questions about a foundation or want to run a closed race on a foundation bib, give me a holler. I'm happy to talk about it.
awesome. Well, thank you, Jill. I've thoroughly enjoyed this one. I've learned a lot, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners have, and I'm super excited for our next installment.
Now, 2 episodes down, episode 3 to come. I'm having fun with it. I hope this is useful. I know people are listening, and I know that because one of my corral folks incessantly gave me a hard time about our hydration discussion on our last podcast, but I stand by it. Don't run long races without hydration and energy because, especially when the temps like this weekend are hot, it's dangerous. And you'll
Well, if you
perform better. And you'll perform better if your body is happy.
Great. Well, if you like our content and you want to hear more and see more, please like, share, and comment.
And subscribe. We're now on every major streaming service. So whatever you're on, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Sirius XM, whatever, Amazon Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, subscribe to the podcast. Love to see the views. All right. Till next time.
Until next time.